Okay, now let's bring you the story of Noura Hussein, a young Sudanese woman who's been sentenced to death for killing her husband. Noura's story begins when she was 16. She'd fled her family home near Khartoum to escape a marriage forced upon her by her father. For 3 years, she lived with an aunt and focused on getting an education. But when she was 19, she was tricked into returning home and then forced to marry. A few days later, her husband raped her with the help of his relatives who held her down. And when he returned again the next night to repeat the act, Noura fought back, stabbing him several times and eventually killing him. Her case has attracted widespread attention on social media, with the campaign Justice for Noura now trending on Twitter. Well, joining us from New York is Yasmeen Hassan. She's the Global Executive Director of the activist group Equality Now. The group is working on a petition calling for justice for Noura. Thank you so much for joining us here on Al Jazeera to discuss this terrible case. I mean, we keep on referring to this man as her husband, but really he's a rapist. I mean, she never wanted to marry him in the first place. But ultimately, under Sudanese law, marital rape isn't a crime, which presumably is why she has been convicted of murder.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. But Sudanese law, the constitution also provides for full and free consent to marriage. And that is what we are arguing. She never gave her consent to marriage in this case. Her lawyers are, this is a travesty of justice from every angle that you can look at. And it also shows all the various steps in which Sudanese laws and policy failed this young girl who had a very bright future ahead of her. From the aspect of child marriage, Sudanese law allows girls right after puberty to be married off by their fathers. It allows for no marital rape exemption. There's no marital rape recognized under the law. The girl has to be obedient to her husband. So there's lots of aspects of the law that are called into challenge by this case. The case is a very, very hard one under Sudanese law, but when you look at it from a human rights aspect, in many, many other countries of the world, this girl would be looked at as a victim and would be provided services and care, as opposed to being, put in solitary confinement and given the death penalty. So we are appealing to the president, to the legislature, to the Ministry of Justice on behalf of Sudanese activists and international human rights groups that Noura must be freed and this case must be re-looked at. So I think this is also, and the hope that I get here, sorry.
No, please go on.
Oh, so the hope that I have here is that we have had a previous case 4 years ago in Sudan where a young Ethiopian woman was gang raped, and the law at that time provided that if you couldn't prove your rape, you were going to be flogged and guilty of fornication and adultery. And we got together with Sudanese activists, and that time that law was changed, and so the rape provisions were amended, and that woman did get justice. So I'm hopeful that justice will prevail in Noura's case, and I'm hopeful that with international media attention, with international human rights groups and Sudanese activists all working together, we can get there for Noura.
Well, the international attention is there now. The Twitter campaign is gathering steam. There's people like you supporting her. But interestingly, when she was in court, her own family has disowned her. So she was alone in court. She didn't have the family support. And her husband/rapist's family could have had monetary compensation, but actually want her to be sentenced. So it's interesting how, you mentioned that parts of Sudanese law actually are in her favor, but it seems that it's still a cultural barrier that is very difficult to get over in many parts of the world.
And the laws are in conflict. So on the one side, the law says a male guardian marries off a girl or a woman. And on the other hand, the Constitution says full and free consent is required for each marriage, right? So there's that aspect. And then we have the aspect of her the man's family being able to forgive her, which I was hoping they would be able to do. It's the same family, but they have demanded execution. So this appeal is going to be a hard appeal. I know that Noura's lawyers are meeting this Saturday. She has a team of 4 and figuring out what the best defense is. What I'm hearing is that they are going to go for second-degree murder charges, which still carry 5 to 10 years punishment. But we are hoping that the international community can pressurize the government and can re-look at this case and get Noura off free and get her the care and that she needs right now.
I mean, all this attention now, there's a petition on change.org, the Twitter. I mean, how much does that actually impact on the people that ultimately make the decision on Noura's future in life, but really a lot of women like her around the world?
Yes, the danger, the thing is, if people are not aware, people can't speak out. And I've seen even in countries like Iran and in Sudan, international attention has helped in drawing a focus, because I don't think any government needs to or wants to look very, very bad in the international community. So I think that the attention cannot hurt in this case, but we have to do it with a look at what helps Noura, as opposed to what helps the international human rights community. So our focus really in this case has to be on this girl, getting her first out of the death penalty situation and then getting her free.
Yes, and I think
I'm hoping we can all do that together by talking about this case and shining a spotlight.
Well, let's certainly hope so. There's 15 days now within which there can, her appeal, there can be an appeal against her conviction. So let's certainly hope for the best. For the moment, Yasmeen Hassan, Global Executive Director from the activist group Equality Now, thank you so much for having joined us.
Thank you so much for having me.